This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Baruchim Habayim. Welcome everyone to a special edition of All Parsha, Parshas Bamidbar, the Baal Haturim on Parshas Bamidbar. This is the beginning of the new launch of the All Parsha site and app. So welcome everybody. It's a great honor to be learning together. And this particular share will be posted on other venues, on Torah Anytime. However, from here on, this series will be available exclusively on the OU site and app. Well, without further ado, let us see. Be'ez Hashem, today we're going to examine 3 small Baal Haturims and then 1 additional one, which will be the main offering of today. We begin with the first Baal Haturim on this week's Parsha, which is relevant to the Yom Tov of Shavuos, Habaleinu L'Toiva. Parak Aleph, Pasuk Aleph begins, Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Bamidbar Sinai. Well, it says Baal Haturim. Juxtaposed to this is the very end of Vayikra, Eila HaMitzvos. What is the connection between Eila HaMitzvos and Bamidbar Sinai? Says the Baal Haturim. This teaches that only if a person renders himself hefker, ownerless, available for all, then they can truly know the Torah mitzvahs. If Eila HaMitzvos, then, if somebody wants to understand the mitzvahs, it's only b'midbar Sinai, if somebody renders himself hefker, ownerless like a midbar. Now the Baal Haturim picks up on the symbolism of the names of the 12 Nasiim. We know the first Nasi, the Reuven, Elitzur ben Shedeur, and the final Nasi of Naphtali, Achira ben Einon. Hence, the first name mentioned is Elitzur, a lashon of guarding. The last name mentioned is Einon, a lashon of the eye. Says the Baal Haturim, Parak Aleph Pasuk Hey, Reuven, Elitzur ben Shedeur. The Nasiim begin with Elitzur, end with Einon, similar to that which it says in Devarim Parak Lamed Beis, Yitzerenu ki ishain Einoi. God preserves us like the pupil of His eye. In other words, this is the love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu for Klal Yisrael, evidenced by the count in this week's Parsha. By the way, the Ger Rebbe said, why did Hashem count us? Because a davar shebeminyan, something which is counted in halacha, never becomes batel. So here also we see the great love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Elitzur ben Shedeur, Hashem guards us like the Elitzur, He guards us like Einon, like the pupil of the eye. Parak Aleph Pasuk Tes Zayin. The Pasuk says, Eila Keruei Ha'eda. These are the appointed ones of the congregation. However, the word Keruei, even though it's read Keruei, it's spelled Kerie. It's what is called a Vav Ketia, a half a Vav. It's like a Yud. Why? Because the Nasiim were not Shalem. One of the Nasiim was Shlumiel ben Sri Shaddai, who is Kozvi Basur, and he succumbed in the sin of Zimri. He is Zimri ben Solu, as the Gemara says in Sanhedrin Daf Pei Beis. Interestingly, says Baal Haturim, by the Adas Koirach, it says Kirie, it's completely missing the Vav. It's not a Vav Ketia, it's a Vav Chasar, and that's because they were all Rishaim in the times of Koirach. And now for the major offering today. Parak Aleph Pasuk Mem Beis, by all the counts of the various Nasiim, it says Livnei Asher, Livnei Dan, Livnei Vinyamin, Livnei Yosef, Livnei Zevulun, Binei Naphtali, missing the Lamed. Why is it missing the Lamed? Says the Baal Haturim. Why does it say Binei Naphtali? Because Naphtali had more girls than boys. That is why in the bracha of Naphtali it says a remez to the word Isha. Ayala Shalucha Hanoisein in Parshas Vayechi. Rashi Tevis Isha, because Naphtali Shevet were predominantly female. That is why in Parshas Pinchas, when the generation of the Midbar died out, it says B'nai. So it was mostly women, so by all the Shvatim it says B'nai. So here in Bamidbar, in the first count, everyone else is Livnei because they were predominantly male, except for Naphtali. So it says Binei, Naphtali is Binei, everyone else is Livnei with a Lamed, and later on, after the death of the men, it says Binei by all the Shvatim. But the question is, Marav Rabbi, dear friends, Haloi Davarhu, why does the Lamed indicate masculine, and the absence of it indicate Nekeva, indicate feminine? Since when is Lamed associated with males? Asks the Sefer Asher L'Shloimei Arabzev Hoberman in his commentary to Koheles. Furthermore, we may ask another question. The Gemara tells us in Megillah on Daf Tes Zayin, and it's also a Brayso in Pirkei Avos, in this week's Avos. And in Avos it says as follows, If you quote someone, you bring redemption to the world. Now I understand quoting someone is admirable, it is a good trait, it shows musar and derech eretz, but why is it so important that it brings geula la'olam? That is the question of the Ben Yehoyada in Masechta Megillah and Daf Tezayin. Furthermore, we could ask that in Sefer Devarim, in the subject of the Toichacha, it says, Vayiteshem Hashem al masam be'afav v'chem v'chad vayashlichem. The word vayashlichem, God cast them, is written with a big lamed, a giant lamed. Halay davarhu. What's going on over here? Why by Naphtali is there no lamed? By all the other shvatim there is a lamed. In Pinchas there's no lamed by any of the shvatim. There's a big lamed vayiteshem. What's going on over here? Well, the Sefer Asher L'Shloimei refers us to Koheles. In Koheles Perek Gimel Shlomo HaMelech counts 28 times. La koyol zeman v'yes l'chol chayfetz tachas hashamayim eisla ledes v'yeslam was 28 times. By all the times, each time is introduced with the letter lamed, with two exceptions. Eis sifoid, a time to eulogize, ve'eis rikoid, and a time to dance. Why doesn't it say eis lispoid? Ve'eis rikoid asks none other than the Vilna Gaon in the Sefer Kol Eliyahu. We may add another interesting question. It would seem that Shlomo HaMelech forgot about a 29th time. And that is, what about what it says in Tehillim, Perek Kuf Yotes, Eis lasois lashem heferu terasecha, a time to act for God, you could break the Torah. So, the Gra says that the letter Lamed represents something quite important. The Lamed represents Limud HaTorah. Ooh, now we understand why there's no Lamed by Sephoid, by eulogizing. Because there is a time that we could be Mevatel Torah. Like the Gemara says in Ksubis, Mevatlin Talmud Torah Mipnei Hoitzas HaMeis. We're Mevatel Torah to take out a dead body. Also, we're Mevatel Torah for Achnasas Kala. Says the Gra, Eis Sephoid ve'eis Rekoid. There's a time to eulogize and a time to dance. And at those times, there's no lamed, there's no limud. You're allowed to be mevatel Torah for a sfaid, for eulogy, and for a koid, for dancing. Wow, what an amazing remez. That is why the lamed is not there. And this indicates and gives us a clue as to what the symbolism of a lamed is. And this will help for this week's Parsha and Haturim. Lamed stands for limud. Now, the truth is that the Gra was already preceded by the Rishonim, the Avudraham and the Rekeach. They also say that the Sephoid and Rekoid are missing the Lamed because Lamed represents Limud, represents learning. However, if one pays careful attention to the 28 Zmanim, one will notice that there are other Zmanim that it doesn't say Lamed. For example, Eis Kenois Avonim. Why doesn't it say Ve'eis Lichnois Avonim? Or it says Eis Milchama V'yesh Shalom, a time for war and a time for peace. These are another three examples where there's no Lamed. And sure enough, the Gra does not ignore these three other instances. In the Shnois Eliyahu on the Mishnah, the Gra addresses all 5 instances that there's no Lamed in the Zmanim of Shlomo HaMelech. Says the Holy Gra, when it comes to Sephoid eulogy, the reason why there's no Lamed, says the Gra, is because an Avel is pater from Talmud Torah. So when it comes to eulogy, the inyan, the subject of mourning, an Avel is pater from Talmud Torah, a little different than the Gra said in the Kol Yahu, where one is pater from Talmud Torah to bury. A chasan is pater from Kriyas Shema. So that's why it says Eis Rikoid and not Eis Lirkoid, because when it comes to marriage, the chasan is pater from Kriyas Shema, which is a replacement, so to speak, and a form of Talmud Torah. When it comes to gathering stones, the Gra says in Knais Avanim, this refers to someone who is so busy and occupied, amassing wealth and precious gems, so his lamed, his limud, falls by the wayside. What about Milchama? Remember when Yehoshua ben Nun was going out to war, and the Malach came and he said, Yoshua, I have 2 accusations against you. You didn't bring the carbon tamid yesterday, and you're mavato from learning. So Yeshua said, which one is it? Which one are you coming primarily for? And the Malach says, Atabasi, I'm coming for Talmud Torah. Why? Because you should have been learning now. I understand during the day you didn't have to learn, but at least at night you have to learn. Says the Gra, we see that if somebody's waging war, okay, in the nighttime when you're not actively waging war, you have to be involved in learning, but during the day when you're waging war, there's a patur of Talmud Torah. That's why it says Eis Milchama, not Eis Limilchama. Ooh. And likewise, Eis Shalom. What does this mean? Says the Gra, Bayaz, as recorded in the end of Masechta Brachos, was Masakein, that for the sake of peace, you could greet somebody with Hashem's name because of Eis Lasois Lashem Heferu Torah. For the sake of Shalom, you could be Mavatel Hashem in the Torah. So Eis Shalom, when it comes for peace, also the Lamed could also be pushed aside. Hence it doesn't say Eis Lishalom, but Eis Shalom. Says the Sefer, Asher L'Shloimai of Rav Hoberman. Now we understand why Shlomo did not list the Zman of Tehillim, Eis Lasois Lashem Heferu Torah, a time to do for God. You could break the Torah because he did. That's the Eis Shalom. The Eis Shalom is the Eis Lasois Lashem Heferu Torah. The Eis Shalom refers to the takana of Boaz, that you could say Hashem's name almost for no great function other than greeting your friend. That is licensed from the pasuk of Eis Lasois Lashem Heferu Torah. Well, amazingly, we have come to discover that the Lamed represents Limud HaTorah, learning. Ooh, says the Sefer, Asher L'Shloimai. This would explain why the Lamed is absent by the count of Shevet Naphtali, and why it's absent by the count of all the Shvatim in Parshas Pinchas. Lamed represents Limud HaTorah. When it comes to Limud HaTorah, the chiyuv, the obligatory nature of Limud HaTorah, devolves, rests on Anoshim, rests on men. Women are exempt from the mitzvah da'iraisa of v'higisa ba'yom v'layla. Certainly it's very admirable and worthy for a woman to be regularly involved and connected to the Torah, but the lamed that is incumbent, the onus of the lamed, rests on Anoshim. Hence, to signify zachar, male, we use a lamed. When the lamed is absent, that indicates Nekeva. Therefore, all the other Shvatim that were predominantly male, it says Livnei, 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 except for by Naphtali. They were predominantly female. Therefore, it says B'nei Naphtali, says the Sefer Asher L'Shloimai on Koheles. This explains the Haturim in Parshas Bamidbar, that since the B'nei Naphtali were predominantly Nekeva, that's why it says B'nei Naphtali. And that, says the Asher L'Shloimai, explains the nuance in Parshas Pinchas, why by all the Shvatim, since the men had passed on, had died, therefore it says, B'nei by all the Shvatim. Ooh, comes the Ben Ish Chai and the Ben Yehoyada. And he says, now we understand the quid pro quo. When somebody says Torah over in the name of somebody else. Namely, why would somebody want to say Torah and attribute it to themselves if really somebody else said it? It's ga'ava, it's arrogance, it's hubris, it's gaiva. Gimel, Aleph, Vav, Hey. But if they say it over in someone else's name, it's because they're learning Torah lishma. So when somebody overcomes their gaiva, their arrogance, and he injects the lamed. Lamed is a limud, real limud, Torah lishma, limud, then that's mevi, lamed, into gaiva is geula. By the way, the Chida says that on the word vayash lichem, you know why there's a big lamed? Because if you ever take the lamed out of the Jewish people, then you're left with the vav, yud, shin, chaf, mem, which is gematria Esav. When the lamed is removed from Klal Yisrael, then the letters that remain on vayash lichem, the Chida says, are, he writes this in the Sefer Chomas Anach, are gematria Esav 376. But somebody who wants to say over someone else's Torah in their own name, that's arrogance. When we say over Torah in other people's name, that injects Torah Lishma. The Lamed goes into the gaiva and it becomes geula. Hence, kala oimer davar b'shem amrai. Anyone who says something over and the one who said it, maybe geula la'olam, brings redemption to the world. Wishing everyone an amazing Shabbos and a wonderful upcoming Shavuos haba alinu l'toiva agut yamtiv chag kosher v'sameach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.